Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Isn't That Rich podcast. Today we are talking about new business laws for 2024, which I think is going to be so important for so many of our listeners. And today we have a special guest on. His name is Martin Parsons. He is the lawyer and owner of Legal Advocacy Headquarters, which is a law practice in Carterville for small businesses. So Martin, welcome on to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today about the new laws.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited that you're excited about new laws.
I know.
Well, Jared actually and I went to the Marion Chamber luncheon this past month in November, and Martin spoke about the new business laws for 2024, and we thought how apropos we need to have him on to talk about these new laws, because every small business in this area, or any business in general, needs to know about these. So I'm so glad that it worked out that we could have you on before the new year began.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so welcome. I guess we can get right into it, because there's a lot of content to cover today.
There is.
Yeah.
But first, I want you to talk a little bit about your small business that you have and the things you've been doing the past couple of years to help small businesses. And we met you at a mastermind, and I remember just being like, this guy's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So our practice focuses almost exclusively on helping small businesses and nonprofits, which are small businesses themselves.
Yes.
So that's really all we do. So we hope that gives us a little bit of an edge and helps us understand them. And we really think of ourselves as more partners with small businesses, and we don't, instead of just transactional things. We have a couple ways that we do that. We have some subscription things.
I love that you do that.
Thank you.
Because, when people think about hiring an attorney for something like this, they don't think that they can actually, number one, afford it. And so I feel like you offer some products that are really ways that make it more attainable for small businesses too.
It feels more approachable at your business, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what we also wanted to do. Yeah, we wanted to be approachable, because going to see lawyers can be scary. You typically don't see them under good circumstances. So we want to be for you to come see us before you need us, really, when you oftentimes do. And through subscriptions, we can help do that. And all of our prices are on our website. So we try to be very transparent, too, in our pricing, so that so they know what they're going to pay and what they're getting into.
Great.
It's just important.
Yeah.
So
really
that's what
great.
we do.
I'm excited to hear about these new laws. How many are there? 7?
I've got
how many are we talking about
I think
today?
I've got 5 or 6 on our list today. The kind of the big ones to talk about.
Yeah. We were on a phone call with Martin yesterday, and I was shocked at some of these, and even talking about the fines. We'll go into the fines that may happen to people if you do not follow these laws. It's going to be a big deal. So It's going to be a great episode. Let's dig in. Martin, what is the first new law or a change in a law?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it'd be important just to start with the most obvious one. It's the one that most people know about. It's the increase in the minimum wage in Illinois, going from $13 to $14 an hour beginning January 1st, and that hits everybody, with then the tip wage going up as well to $8.40, and then both of those again will go up in 2025, and then it'll cap out at that in 2025. It'll be $15 an hour. And $9 an hour for tipped employees.
Because this has been gradually rising for the past couple of years. I know there was when I started at the bank, it was kind of like, okay, we know in 2025 it's going to be at $15 an hour. So businesses, let's start cranking it up until we get there, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's coming fast. And I think that really to be competitive, you almost need to edge maybe above that too, because that's the minimum wage. But that's a whole nother maybe discussion about business decisions and what they pay their employees.
I think that's crazy, because I think a lot of it just has to do with inflation. But I think about, how when I was in college, minimum wage was $8.25, I think.
And that wasn't that long ago.
No, not at all. And now it's like, $15 an hour. And I'm like, gosh, $15 an hour. That's, I don't know, just crazy. So how all that has changed over the years. And
so that starts immediately in January 1st. All your employees' minimum wage has to go from 13 to 14. And if it's a tipping position, say a waitress or a barista or a server, that kind of a position, it goes from 840, what it currently is.
It goes to 840.
Oh, it goes to 840, so it's currently lower than that.
And then $9 in 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Well, good to know.
That's a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. What's the next one, Martin?
So the next really big one, too, is the new Paid Leave for All Workers Act. I emphasize all because it applies to any business in Illinois, and it requires employers to provide their employees with a minimum of 40 hours of paid leave per year. Ooh. So, like I said, it applies to all employers. Even if you just have one employee, it applies to you, and it applies to full-time and part-time employees. So even if you have one part-time employee, you've got to pay that person their paid leave.
Okay. Because I want to define employees, because some people think of, well, I have a contract employee. That does this qualify for them as well? Or
No,
is
they
this
have to be
just on the payroll?
Yeah, they just have to be employees.
Okay.
If they are true contracted 1099 contractors, it's just the employees.
Just the employees.
Yeah.
What if somebody decides, let's say I was a part-time worker, and then the entire year I just never took, I decided not to take that 40 hours. What happens? They just still have to pay me that?
No. So that they're not, this leave is not required. You don't have to pay this leave out like the other leave under the Normal Wage Payment and Collection Act, normal paid leave, if someone's already providing that. Okay. Under this act, they're not required to pay it out, but it's the law's confusing in that it says that that employee could roll over those 40 hours to the next year, but yet it also says that an employer isn't required to pay any more than 40 hours a year. So it's very contradictory about what happens with leave that is accrued and rolled over if it's not taken.
Didn't you say yesterday that a lot of people are really confused about these new laws, and so they're having to clarify a lot of it?
Yeah,
Stuff like that, what you just said.
Yes. Yeah, there are quite a few things. I mean, and there are a lot of intricacies to it. The Department of Labor did just publish some proposed rules to help try to clarify it. That specific thing that I talked about with the rollover wasn't clarified.
Okay.
In fact, I think it's muddier than it was before, but there are other things that were clarified.
Yeah, so maybe you can just give us an overview of this entire thing, and then we'll ask some more questions, because I feel like I have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah,
so maybe you should explain it.
Rundown.
Yeah, give us the rundown of this. So this is the Paid Leave for All
questions.
Workers Act, and this, like you already said, requires employers, if they have one employee, to give 40 hours of paid leave for all workers.
Right.
Okay.
And employees they accrue that, so not every employee gets 40 hours a year. They accrue it at 1 hour for every 40 hours that an employee works. So a part-time employee is not going to accrue it the same as a full-time employee will. They just accrue it as they work. So it might take them, if you have someone who's just working a day or two a week, it would obviously take them longer to accrue that time than it would somebody else.
Okay.
And they can use it for any purpose. And they don't have to tell the employer why they're using it. If they want to use it to go to the doctor, run errands, they can. And if they do use it to go to the doctor, they don't have to tell their employer or provide a doctor's note either. And the employer can't require it. They can't require a doctor's note. And then when they do take it, in the past, I know I have a lot of employers who require their employees to take their vacation in half days,
like larger chunks of time. Okay.
And under this act, the largest chunk or the smallest chunk is 2 hours. That they can require their employees. They can't require them to take 4 hours at a time. 2 hours is
the minimum.
The minimum.
Okay.
Which is really important. That's why there's just a lot of little things in the act that employers might not think about. As I mentioned, if someone leaves and they haven't taken their leave, if they're either terminated or they leave, that leave doesn't have to be paid. It's not like other leave that would have to be paid out. And if an employer is already providing leave that
Yeah.
meets the requirement, if they've got the normal leave under the minimum wage law, then they don't have to add this leave to what they're doing.
That was a big question I had. So you already have a really great leave policy in place. They don't have to do this on top of it. So say they already give, however many days off or however many
Vacation, I guess. Right.
leave time. Yeah. This doesn't have to be an additional 40 hours to that.
Right. Yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
But they still have to then look at their policies, make sure that they're up complying with the other things like that 2-hour
The
minimum.
2-hour increments.
Yep, as well as having a written policy, which is really important as part of this, about how someone takes the leave, how they request it, what's required or not required. It has to be in a written policy provided to the employee.
Okay.
But if someone already has leave, let's say they're providing 40 hours of leave already, they could offer this leave instead, or let's say they're offering, maybe they're doing 10 days a year. They could offer this as part of that leave. They could split it and have 2 types of leave.
I see.
So then when someone leaves or is terminated, they would only have to pay out for the other leave.
part, because this does not require you to pay it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, depending on how many employees you have and your bookkeeping systems, that could get a little complicated if you're just to try to save a few bucks.
Right.
But it's an option that you have under the new policy.
Okay.
That's why you might need a lawyer.
Exactly.
Small
So
business
someone-
lawyer.
Yep, to someone
Write up
help
this
advise
policy
you.
for you. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would.
Yeah. So what about, so I'm thinking about like the part-time people, or say, I'm just trying to figure out, how do you account for that? I mean, that's tricky with the part-time people.
Yes. My recommendation would be you need to have some kind of bookkeeping service, payroll service probably, that does that.
Yeah.
Unless you've got if you're big enough to have a good in-house person, you should it's probably worth the investment to, subscribe to some. There are a lot of them out there
payroll
that do those
services,
that could track that, because tracking it and keeping, making sure that you're accounting for it and providing it is what's going to keep you from having to pay these fines that we'll talk about at the end.
Yeah.
But
Because essentially you're just adding up people's hours, and then remind me again, you said to accrue
40 hours to accrue 1 hour.
accrue 1 hour. Yes. So you want to be really good with watching your employees' hours, because that's essentially how you're keeping track of
Exactly. And as part of this new rulemaking that I haven't completely digested because it just came out on Monday, they talk about how that leave is rolled over and accrued. So
Okay.
like if you work 40, or an employee works 46 minutes, they get counted for a full hour. So there's a lot of things that you really would need to have somebody who knows how to do it and can do it well,
Yeah.
to make sure that it's tracked properly.
Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, because typically you'd think, okay, I'm a full-time employee. I work 40 hours a week. So for every week I get an hour. But actually it's a little less than that if you're only working 45 minutes to qualify for 1 hour. So that's tricky.
Well, and it could be. So salaried employees, if you have salaried employees who maybe are working 38 hours, but they're a salaried employee, they are considered to be working 40 hours a week,
Right.
kind of automatically. So their tracking is a little different.
Okay.
Again, another intricacy to the new law.
Can you use your hours before you've accrued? That word's hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Accrued
It is.
40 hours. So if I've accrued 20 hours, I can use my 20 hours?
Yep, you can
Okay,
use them
okay.
as you earn them.
Those are things I think about.
Yeah,
I'm like,
they're-
I got to get my 40 in before I can take 2 of them.
Then to use it.
You can use as you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
An employer can, if they don't want to mess with the whole rollover that we talked about earlier, an employer can front load those 40 hours at the beginning of the leave year, and then the employee has them to use. The downside for an employer is that if that employee burns up their 40 hours and then
And
leaves.
they're like, peace out, I'm done here. Thanks
Yeah,
for the vacation, but I'm out.
Yeah, you can't recover that or
Yeah.
charge them for it later.
Okay, so you can't subtract that from their last
From their last
paycheck.
pay, you cannot do that.
Okay.
No.
Good to know. Not
another-
that I would if I was an employer, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's frustrating.
Yeah.
If an employee would do that.
yeah.
For sure. But it does get rid of the whole hassle of rolling over, not rolling over. What do you do with those hours if you front load them?
Absolutely.
If you have a new employee, kind of speaking of using your leave, there's a lot of employers give a 90-day kind of let's see how things are going to work probation period, and some employers now don't allow employees to accrue any benefits during that time. You have to wait till you're in. But under the new law, employees begin accruing those hours
Immediately?
Immediately.
Even through
just
training,
can't
I
use-
bet.
Yep. They can't use them. You can keep them from using them for 90 days, but they start accruing them.
Okay.
Another thing that's a little different.
Yeah, that is different because you can put people, I know we do it here, if this job's working for you, is this job working for me? And then you test the waters, and then after 90 days, you have your meeting. And yeah, if it works out, well, great, we'll continue with this. But that's when your benefits would typically start. So you're saying that that 40-hour paid leave starts immediately when they start training.
Yep, they start accruing that leave once they become an employee.
I guess, and as an employer, you can decide whether you want them to be able to use it right away.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you could allow them to take it early if you wanted to.
Okay.
You just don't have to.
Just don't have to.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
In order to, because then if something doesn't work out, they accrue that leave, and if they don't work out and they could move on, you don't have to pay out that leave. I think that's the concession, one of the concessions for allowing them to accrue from when they start.
Got it.
All right. Anything else with that one?
Oh,
That's
gosh.
a lot. but it's
There are
important.
still a lot. I guess it depends. Tipped employees, if they take time off, they have to be paid at the regular full minimum wage, not their tipped minimum wage.
Okay, so we just learned that it's going up to $14 an hour next
Right.
year. So they have to be paid at the $14 an hour under this new law.
Right.
If they take
not
off,
that lower 840, that tipped wage.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a big change.
Yeah, which makes sense. They're not
Yeah.
going to be getting tips during that time, so they should be paid the minimum wage.
Yeah.
So,
something comes up for me is like, okay, you're going to take this leave. Do you have to give me as an employer any notice? Like, is that something that comes up? Do they have to say 7 days notice, or can you? I guess that's something you can write in your policy.
yeah, and it needs to be in the policy. It's one of the things the Act requires is the notification procedure. So, if it's foreseeable, you can require up to 7 days. If it's not foreseeable, they're supposed to let you know as soon as practicable, I think is the legal word. But as soon as they can, they're supposed to let you know if it's an emergency. But it needs to be in the policy what your requirements are for notification and email, a call. How do they notify you, and who do they notify?
And how does that whole process work?
Yeah, and that just
HR is
needs
going to be a big job.
I
Yep,
know.
It's just got to be in that policy.
Yes.
For sure.
Big deal.
And I keep hitting that policy, but it's probably one of the most important parts of it is having it in writing that you provide to them. I suggest having them, having a signature block on the policy so they signed, and you put that in their file so that you know that they received it, so that if you're ever audited, you can show Department of Labor we're trying here. We're
Yeah,
doing
we've
what we're
shown
supposed to
them this. It's up to them to, what do they say? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
So same with the employee, right? You can tell them
yeah.
what's going on or what the policy is, but you can't. Yeah.
I think educating, this kind of brings up, I don't know, I feel like sometimes when you sit in a meeting with your HR when you first get a job and they're like, here's all this paperwork, I think it's important, this stuff kind of slows it down. You need to educate your employees on this because it's really important.
Yeah, it's important. It's important benefit for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the intent is that you should be able to take time off.
Right.
We need to take time off, and that was the intent of the legislation. And so, encouraging them to take it and how to take it. That initial sit down with them in the employee handbook and going through all that stuff is very important.
Yeah.
For sure.
So if you have it in your handbook, are you required to display it anywhere else? Is there anything else you have to do if you have that signature from the employee?
Yeah. In addition, they haven't published it yet, but they're going to. The state's going to have a poster to add to all your other required posters that talks about this.
Love putting those big posters up in the back room
gotta
of
have 'em
your
up.
employee rights.
You got to have them up there.
Got to have them
Exactly.
displayed.
where
Okay.
everybody can see them.
Okay.
Wouldn't you like to be in charge of that marketing poster, Jill?
No, thank you. I would actually make it look so much better, right? No,
I know,
I'm just
it's not
kidding.
very cute, government workers. Sorry.
It is clear, though. It is
Very clear, concise.
So,
You did a good job.
Yep.
No.
What else do we need to know about this?
It's just that there's a lot. I mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of fines. It gets really expensive if you don't get it right. The minimum fine is $2,500 for every infraction, and that goes directly to the state to help fund the policing of this. And then there's fines and penalties that are paid to the worker. So starts at $2,500 and just goes up.
So every
And that ain't
time that you're not following this procedure, you get fined $2,500.
Yep, as a start. Yeah,
As
and
a
there's just
start.
more.
So you might as well have just paid the $14 minimum wage for the
But a heck of a lot cheaper, I bet.
Yeah, just do it.
Right.
And you think that, no, I'm not going to get audited. It's not going to happen to me. But it only, what will happen is if you're not following this, some employee is going to talk to an employee from somewhere else who's getting
works
their
for the
paid,
government.
who's getting their paid leave, and they're like, wait a minute, I'm not getting paid when I'm not getting my paid leave. And then they file a complaint with the Department of Labor, and then it
all
becomes a
trickles down.
mess.
Yeah.
And boom, you've got a $2,500 fine on your desk.
Yep.
Wow.
It could have been avoided.
Wow, wait.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we need to know, or are we ready to move on to the next law?
I mean, we could probably spend the whole hour.
I know,
talking
I
about
was
that
just gonna
one,
say,
so
that
we
could-
won't, necessarily. Well, I will plug. I did a video that we've got, a little short course.
Yeah.
That if they wanted to email me, we could provide them with a link to that and even a discount for your listeners too.
Oh, that's good to know.
but the same thing
We'll
I offer
include
for
that
the
in the
chamber.
show notes
Yeah,
now.
I can give that information.
Okay, that would be really great.
We dig more deeply into it.
That's great. Thanks, Martin.
All right, the next one.
Next law
This one's
for
interesting.
2024.
Yeah, this one is. I really feel like it was slid under the radar, but it's important. The Crown Act, and I really like the name and what it stands for, and I want to make sure I get it right, so I'm going to read it too. So the Create a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair, the Crown Act. I think it's cool how that came together.
Yeah.
And kind of the history is in 2021, Governor Pritzker signed a law that introduced this in schools to limit the discrimination in schools, that then more recently, another senator, Senator Hunter, introduced to expand it under the Illinois Human Rights Act to cover all the things that the Illinois Human Rights Act covers: employment, housing, financial transactions, public accommodations, hiring and firing, and that's how it applies to our talk today. A different version of it was submitted for the House of Representatives, but it hasn't gone anywhere. But in Illinois, we have.
Okay.
And it clarifies what race means, and expands it to includes, and again, I want to quote this one: traits commonly associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture, protected hairstyles such as braids, locks, and twists.
So this is just essentially being more inclusive to those who do have different hair types.
Yeah.
So not to discriminate as an employer against that.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I didn't even realize that was.
A
Something
thing.
people...
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
you wouldn't think that we would need a law to
Yeah.
make
Right, that's
us
what
do
I
the
mean.
right thing.
Yeah.
But we do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Well, now it's in place for 2024.
Yep.
The Crown Act.
The Crown Act.
Good.
Good to know.
So the next new law is kind of a big deal too, because we love talking about finances and investing for the future. And this is one that Illinois is passing called Secure Choice.
Yeah.
And it's all about retirement, right?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell us a little about this new law.
So it's been in effect for a couple of years. It's just been ratcheting down the minimum number of employees that are covered. Until November 1st, it came to be 5 or more employees. If you have 5 or more employees, you're covered and required either to provide your own retirement program, or sign your employees up for Illinois' Secure Choice program.
Okay. That's a big deal because I think of all these small businesses with at least 5 employees that are on the payroll. And this is kind of the same thing we talked about before with the other law, right? So if you have 5 people on the payroll, not a 1099 worker.
Right.
Great.
Exactly. And there are some 5 employees in the last 4 quarters of the calendar year, and there's some other little intricacies to it as well.
Okay.
That if anybody has a question for sure whether my 5 employees fit, my recommendation is to go to the website, go through the registration process to see if you have to or not.
Okay.
An important piece, though, is a lot of employers are like, I can't match that, I can't afford it. It doesn't require a matching. It's not a matching retirement plan. It doesn't require that. It just requires that an employer offer either their own or sign them up for Illinois' program.
Okay.
So if they're signed up for the Illinois program, does the employer have to pay anything?
No, they're not. They don't have to.
That's good.
But they still have to. But the employer still has the burden of deducting and depositing, just like if they had their own.
Oh, okay. Yes, okay. I'm
So they
thinking
would
that they would
administrative
still have
burden.
to.
Yeah, of deducting the contributions from the employee's
That's what I'm
pay
trying to say, yeah.
and depositing it with Secure Choice. They still all have that.
So what I'm learning is that employers really need to get with a bookkeeper to figure out, or a payroll program to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not a financial guy.
Yeah.
I've recently talked to a couple after my talk in Marion.
Yeah.
Had a few call me and talk about some tax incentives for employers who do provide matching retirement funds like this that would meet the criteria. And so I think it's just important for someone to go find a financial advisor and talk about this, because you might be able to offer a matching or at least contributing retirement plan and get some tax breaks.
Tax benefits from
Yeah.
that.
Because you've got to sign them up. It's required. You've got to register. By registering, you automatically sign all your people up. Your employees don't have a choice. But then they have to affirmatively opt out within 30 days.
So every employee has to opt out.
Yeah. they have
Not
to
the
do that.
employer.
Exactly. The employer registers, signs all their people, and then tells their people about that, lets them know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then they have 30 days to opt out. If they don't, they're automatically in, and the employer then is required to withdraw that minimum amount
Into
from
their
the employee's check.
So if you are enrolled, you have to withdraw out of a check.
Exactly. If you don't want to.
You can't just not.
Yeah.
You just can't just be enrolled and then not do it. Is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. An
to
employee
know.
has to affirmatively get out within 30 days.
Okay. And this was a question, and I went on the website and looked a little bit because this has me interested. And I was looking on there, and so the employee, when you have a 401k or whatever, you sign up, you sit down with your employer, and you fill out, and you tell your money where to go after it's in your retirement account. Mm-hmm. With this, it sounds like it's just they have their own program, so you're not directing your money any which way.
Exactly. You don't
Okay.
have as much. That's one of the downsides of just falling into the state's program, is you don't have any say over that.
About where your money is being invested and whatnot once it's in this secure choice.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, as an employer, it might be worth looking into some options that you could provide for your employees, even if you're not going to match, that might help them, might be a better fit for them for the reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah.
For them to have the ability to maybe manage their money
Yeah.
a little different.
Have a little bit more control, I guess, if that's something that you want. But for those who don't have anything in place right now, this might be a great option. So,
Yeah. And I see here that this is interesting. It applies to full-time and part-time employees.
Yep, exactly.
So a lot of this seems to be changing with part-time employees, a lot of these laws, because I feel like when you here, it's like if you're part-time, you don't get benefits or you don't get a match or whatever. I'm not saying specifically here, wherever some people work that are part-time. So it is nice for people that are part-time.
Yep, I agree. It is.
Because I feel like you're a mom and you only want to work part-time and then half the time be home with your kids, and then you can still be contributing to a retirement plan.
Exactly. And getting some time off and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That'd be great.
But as you mentioned, the website that they have, that ilsecurechoice.com, or that they just Google Illinois Secure Choice, there's a lot of really good information on the website.
Yeah, and it's
very
pretty
user-friendly.
I was just going to say it's pretty easy to maneuver around and figure out what's going on. Like there's a clear employer, there's a clear employee section, and you just click on what you're looking for. And
Here's my question. So we're saying the minimum's 5. What if I have 3 employees? Can I still sign them up for this Illinois Secure Choice?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Ooh, I caught him. He doesn't have the answer.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
That you still could.
I would think so.
Yeah. I don't see why you couldn't. It's just that the requirement is 5.
Yeah.
And then why wouldn't you then if you could
Yeah.
to provide them a little something?
Right. I always think that's, if you're an employee looking for somewhere to work, you're going to keep your employees longer if you do offer something like this. So this is, if you're not offering it now, why not? It's not any skin off your back besides just doing the payroll withdrawal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, anything else we need to know about Illinois Secure Choice program?
No, I think that's the high points for sure.
Yeah.
Go to check that out. They need to register. If you've got 5 or more, you need to register.
Got to register as a business.
Yeah, because again, there's going to be fines and penalties if you don't.
And that starts immediately right now. Is that open for employees right now?
Yep.
Okay, so that's as of November. I saw kind of on the website that they need to be registering.
Need to do it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I don't know if this is like a dumb question, but I'm going to ask kind of the dumb question. Like, if I was a business owner, besides this podcast right now with Martin Parsons telling me about it, how do employers know about these laws? How is the government kind of getting this information into an employer's hands? I guess is the question I'm asking.
It's a great question, because there's not like a list that really an employee or a business owner almost has to be proactively looking for these themselves to find out what are the news laws, and watching the news, and or plugging in with a chamber or somewhere else who's going to provide that help for them.
Yeah, because I'm like, what if I just I live off the grid and I have a business and I don't listen to anything, and then I'm slapped with these like fines, and then you have to pay them.
I know. Well, I think as a business, part of being a business owner is not being negligible. Like you're in charge of getting out there and finding out this stuff. You're in charge. You're placing other people's livelihoods in your hands. Like, it is an obligation that you have now. Negligence is no longer an option. So hire a lawyer, hire somebody to help you and advocate for you in this kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, is find a good lawyer you can partner with, who will help provide you this information. Maybe they've got a subscription so that it doesn't cost you a lot of money.
Right. That's an excellent plug, Martin. I love it. I agree. Okay, what is the next law we need to know about in 2024?
All right, so this is the government getting involved in our even more involved in our business. The Beneficial Ownership Information Reporting Act, the BOI, that requires, and there's no minimum size, so every domestic corporation, limited liability company has to file with FinCEN, financial center, who owns their business. Any organization, except nonprofits and some financial institutions are exempted, has to file with the government and disclose who their owners are.
Okay, so this is just saying that you own a business. You're required to say who the owners are in that business and the percentage that they have.
Exactly.
Okay. That doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but maybe it might be if you're like an LLC and you're trying to, hide behind that LLC for whatever reasons. And now it's requiring you to disclose all the beneficial ownerships of those businesses.
Yes. And that information isn't going to be publicly available. It's only available to other government entities who can use it. So it's not something, because there are states, this is a federal regulation, not just Illinois, but there are states where you can register your business and not have to disclose who the owners are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons to do that. So this requires that you disclose them, but that information is not available to everybody.
public.
Yeah, which is what the original intent is. So they still maintain their anonymity, and then they can, the government can find out who you are.
Who you are instead of it being
Illinois doesn't allow that. In Illinois, when you register, you've got to
disclose
who they are. There's not a good way to do that, or a simple way to do that in Illinois anyway. But there are some entities that are excluded. Nonprofits don't have to do it. And like I said, financial institutions, insurance companies, and there are a few more other entities. The website, the fincen.gov /BOI, they have a really good PDF guide for employers or businesses so that they can know if they qualify, if they have to register, how to do it.
Yeah.
It's very user-friendly. So I would recommend somebody check that out. But again, it's something that every business has to do January 1, and there will be consequences.
What are the consequences? I always worry about, because that $2,500 per implication sounds pretty scary to me for the previous law we talked about. So what about this one? Do we know what that is yet or not yet?
It doesn't say what they are.
Okay.
But it gives you an ability to cure it. So if you haven't registered and they reach out, then they're going to give you time to fix it.
Okay.
So I don't think and it doesn't cost anything to register. It doesn't seem to be particularly onerous. You can't register yet. The registration isn't open until January 1st.
Okay.
But everybody's going to have to, every LLC or corporation, no matter if they have one member or one owner, is going to have to register that company.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions about that one?
I'm just soaking that one in. I think the government knows everything, and you got to put your name on everything. So I'm not shocked about this, I guess. I don't know. I don't own a business. You both own businesses, so I'm just okay.
I mean, I never get. I don't know. I'm not one that's always concerned about the government being in my business. I figure if I don't have anything to hide, then
why not?
Care?
Right.
What do I care?
Yep, I agree.
But not everybody feels that way.
Right. And we'll link that website, because I feel like you said there's a good compliance guide and you can get it from that website.
Yeah.
So we'll link that for sure in the show notes too. Mm-hmm. Well, good. All right. We have a couple other ones left in this episode. So what is the next one we want to talk about?
So the last one we saved to last in case we had enough time or not. Because it doesn't go into effect until 2025, but I think it's really good to start thinking about now.
Yeah.
It's called the Pay Transparency Act, but it's really an amendment to the Illinois Equal Pay Act that requires employers that have 15 or more employees, so not the small businesses, to post their pay, or at least a scale, a range of what the position pays.
I know there's a huge push for this, especially with the millennials and Gen Z and all of this. They're like, I think it's silly when a business posts a job posting and they don't tell me what they're going to pay me. And I feel like this is kind of a good thing to have. And I feel like there might be some businesses push back with this one, but I feel like transparency is the best way to be.
I do too. I think it's really silly, because I even remember looking for jobs out of college and being so frustrated because you feel like you're wasting your time applying for a job that you might, you have no idea how much they're going to pay you. Mm-hmm. What's the point? So I think this is a good one.
I agree. I think that employers going to get better quality candidates, more serious candidates, because they know what it's going to pay. There's nothing worse than going through that whole process and you offer the job and then you tell them how much it pays and they're like,
wasted my time, wasted yours.
Nothing, but, I can't work for that, even if you try to negotiate and you can't get there. But this way, it's transparent, and they know if they apply, at least what the range is, so that you're going to have better. I think you're going to have better candidates who are more serious.
For your.
So I don't think it's a bad thing.
And so this, just to be clear, starts not this year, but in 2025.
Right.
And it's only for businesses that employ 15 or more people.
Exactly. Okay. That's the requirement, but gosh, why wouldn't you just do it?
Right. Why wouldn't you do it now? Just start.
Yeah. I think that it just, I don't know, I think it speaks to your culture, your transparency. If you're hiding things from at the beginning, then.
Yeah. Now I have a question. So you mentioned a pay range, which would make sense. Some people that are being offered a position have more years of experience. They might have a higher education. So you're only required to to disclose a pay range. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. A minimum, maximum.
Okay.
But it would make sense because you are going to have candidates with a variety of experience or education and other things they bring.
Yeah. What about internally? So say you're an internal employee, is it
even internal posting?
So is it required for me to say, I know Ashley's salary and I know Jill's salary, or at least that position, what they're making? Is that required in this new law? Internally disclosing payment or salaries?
Not exactly.
Okay.
It's only if you are hiring someone internally, if someone's moving around internally. So kind of eventually those salaries become a little more transparent. And if you have the range, you don't have to disclose what you're specifically paying that person. Yes.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good thing.
I too.
Yeah.
Not mad about it.
No.
I think it's so funny, like how that kind of came to be, like all these
secret.
You can even get on LinkedIn now, and it's just like, what are you paying? Are you even paying for this job, or is this just a volunteer position?
Is this unpaid internship? I don't know.
I have no clue.
Exactly.
And that's great.
Yeah. Anything else we need to know about this one? I know there was something you said that you have to disclose it in writing somewhere, right? Is that correct? Because I think you said you have to post on your website, or it has to be public.
Yeah, it's got to be either in the job posting or you have to have it linked somewhere that's public. It can't be on a private, your private internal drive that only employees have access to. It's got to be publicly available, and you could link to it. There's different ways that you can provide it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be provided in the description or in the initial announcement. It does have to be provided before you make any kind of offer, though.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of, you could wait, but...
Yeah, but why wait?
But why wait?
So like if a candidate for a position comes in, interviews, and they specifically ask you, what does this pay? You would have to provide it to them.
You've got to tell them. Yeah, you can't be cagey and, it depends on your...
Or almost prejudice, like, oh my gosh, they asked me what, they're not interested in the position or in this company. They're just worried about what they pay. Well, yeah, of course they are. That's why exchanging time for money. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And that's also discussed in the act, is you can't discriminate against someone who asks about that.
That's good.
You can't hold that against them or not hire them because of it, because they inquire about the salary.
Right.
I think this will be interesting to look at the different job platforms. So like LinkedIn or Indeed or Google Jobs, how they'll probably have to change some things on their platform because they, I don't know, they might get in trouble if they don't make it required on your job posting or something.
Yeah. So. And now this is just for Illinois, or is this for the entire?
I keep
because that's another thing too, is like them keeping up with Illinois versus Minnesota or anywhere else, right?
Sorry,
because that's where I'm from. But
forgot this was Illinois.
It is.
Yeah. So this is specifically for Illinois.
Yeah, but I think there are other states who are adopting it and looking at it. And I think it's going to, and I haven't looked at all the other states to compare.
Yeah.
But I think it's growing.
Yeah.
That we're not, we might be kind of on the front, but maybe not.
Maybe not. Well, I think it's good. And as a business, just to kind of leave you with this, like, it is important to have somebody who is looking out for your best interests and letting you know about these laws as they come up. So, yeah. Is there anything you would want to leave with our listeners, Martin, that after, going through these laws that you'd want to share with them, or any last thoughts?
There are quite a few of them, and they all have just very specific requirements. So either on your own, as you mentioned, it's your responsibility as a small business owner to know what they are. Ignorance is no excuse, so it's a responsibility we take on. So either finding the time to research it on their own, or get some help in a chamber or other ways like that, or a legal counsel, somebody who can help them navigate it. But it's important to get educated on them.
Absolutely.
So, Martin, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and have you help them with their business on a legal level, how would they find you?
They can go to our website, legaladvocacyheadquarters.com. We've got a contact form there, and our phone number, and everything's there.
Great. Well, we will link that for sure in our show notes. So thank you so much for being on today. This has been so informative.
So wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been great. So maybe we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about something more fun fun than the new laws that we're going to get.
Fun. I'm going to start a business, and I'm not going to get fined $2,500.
No,
Because you're going to do it right.
That's right.
I love it. Well, thanks for listening to another episode, and we will see you next time.
So, Jill, where do we go from here?
Be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.